This next story is a very celebrated and esteemed science fiction story of contemporary author Ted Chiang, and that is The Story of Your Life. This story is the basis of the film Arrival, so it is also eligible for your feature film comparison essay here in a couple weeks. So just be aware of that. And this is getting at a different layer of that cultural social difference that aliens allow us to explore in science fiction, specifically language and communication, which is the foundation of what the story is about. Ted Chiang actually did years and years of linguistic research to be able to write this story. And there's a lot of, sort of complicated ideas involved in it. This is also a longer one, so this might be one that you space out in 2 sittings. But it does get at the idea of communication. Not only communication, but how language and the way we communicate influences the way we think. And there is tons of research that confirms this, that, the way our language works often informs our identity, or it often informs the way that we see the world. For example, in languages that are much more directionally oriented, for example, they tend to have a better sense of direction, whereas languages that have either masculine or feminine grammatical gender, they tend to associate different characteristics with different words depending on their grammatical context. Language is highly influential in the way that we navigate the world. And when there's a language barrier or a cultural barrier or some sort of identity barrier between the human and alien, or between us and the other, then the question becomes how we understand, empathize, and see that other. The story also starts to question the idea of free will and the idea of time, and how changing the language that we think in can change our fundamental understanding of our world experience. And I would like to, in this reading, call back to something I mentioned in your intro video with The Wretched and the Beautiful, which is that a common thing that we think about in science fiction with aliens is motivation. And there is a really unclear motivation for this alien encounter in The Story of Your Life. So keep an eye out for that, and what you think that the reason for this sort of purposelessness might be, or if you think there is a purpose there at all. You also, again, as with all of our alien stories, translating this to other ways that this can apply to the real world, to people and situations and even historical situations that have happened. I think that it's also interesting to think about as you're reading this story how the protagonist changes as the more she interacts with the arrival species, and how understanding their language and thereby their identity and thereby their worldview enhances her empathy and makes her see sort of her own life in a new light, her own experience in a new light. These ideas are, of course, translatable to all sorts of different situations, and certainly relevant to all sorts of situations and circumstances of the other in the real world. So I look forward to seeing what you all think.